What's up, gentlemen? This is Rising Phoenix Podcast, the podcast about how to rise up after your divorce. I'm your host, Michael Rhodes. Let's get into it. Joining me today is Jill. Jill, let's just jump right into it, and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So my name, again, is Jill Coyle. I am a divorce attorney in Utah. I've been a divorce attorney now for almost 14, going on 15 years. Wow. I'm actually licensed in Texas and Utah. I started my career as a divorce attorney down in Texas, Houston, Texas, and that's where I went to law school, worked there, and then I moved back to Utah in 2010 and took the bar here, and then ended up doing family law since. And my story is a little bit unique in the fact that a lot of times you hear lawyers, you know, they go to big law schools and then they get like the big time job either at the firm or, you know, if they go to smaller law schools, they go to, you know, maybe smaller boutique firms. And I went to kind of a smaller law school. And so I did start at a boutique firm. But what I did is I kind of grew through Utah to where in 2014, I was working for one of the largest law firms in the state doing family law. So my story is a little backwards from most attorneys, but what I recognized is that I was kind of building a business and having to deal with the whole, you know, working for a corporation, but trying to understand family law and help as many people as possible. And I realized that it was really hard to do my own dream and my own path when I was working for somebody else. So in 2014, I was pregnant, and I decided though that I really wasn't going to be able to do exactly my goals and achieve what I wanted if I stayed. So I left and started what I call Coyle Law, which is now one of the largest family law firms in the state of Utah. And I have 7 attorneys that work for me, and wow, this is all we do. We do divorce. And so with that, I also, you know, have been kind of saying the same thing the last 10 years, helping my family law clients. And I decided a year and a half ago that maybe I should write it in a book so more people have the opportunity. So I wrote a book, and it's called No One Dies from Divorce: How to Survive and Thrive When Your Marriage Ends. And I'm here as a leader in the field to help you understand that divorce is not the end. It actually can be the beginning. And it could be used as a really great experience or trial to start over again and really improve yourself, become a better friend, a better lover, a better partner, a better parent, even a better human being. So my goal is to change the path of the word divorce from being a shameful subject and more of a movement to really help people know that this can be a launch pad to become a better version of themselves. And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm excited to be here to kind of share a little bit more of what I know and help your listeners know that divorce isn't the end, that it could just be the beginning. So thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for the intro. It's true. And I think that's part of my mission as well, is to at least help get us through that. And part of that is a mindset shift into how you view this thing. And there's lots of things that complicate that and make it really fucking hard. But, and by the way, you can curse. It's okay. I certainly will. So I want to hone in on some of the legal aspects of you know, some of the legal questions that always seem to pop up. And there's 2 that we discussed during the pre-interview that always seem to pop up for guys. And one of those is abandonment. Like, I see guys all the time give advice, which always kind of makes me feel uncomfortable when non-lawyers give legal advice, but it happens all the time. So, but let's talk. One of the biggest ones is abandonment. Like, do not leave the home. You can't leave the home, or you'll abandon it, and they'll use it against you, and et cetera, et cetera. Can you talk about that? And if you know, seeing how you're licensed in 2 states, which is awesome, by the way. Is there a difference by state for this particular question? And if so, what are the differences? And so, yeah, the question is, what is it abandonment to leave the home?
Right. The first thing I want to talk about is advice, first of all. I talk a lot about this because one of the biggest mistakes you can make in divorce is getting advice from the wrong people.
Yes.
You have to remember that divorce law is very, very different to every state, and sometimes particular to even the county you live in. So if you want to make sure that you know the advice that is specifically tailored to you and where you live, talk to a family law attorney right where you live.
Yep.
Find one that is experienced, that this is what they do, and just go meet with them, because they're going to be able to give you the best up-to-date advice. Unfortunately, your friend, your family, their advice isn't necessarily going to be correct. Google doesn't update things. They don't fact check things, and so you can't trust that. So the best thing you can do is get advice from the sources that are really actually going to know and can really help you protect yourself, your future, and your family.
Yep.
Because particular for this question, specifically, if you leave the house, is it considered an abandonment? Well, it is really specific to states, but I'm going to give you some general advice, and then I'll kind of give you more specific advice to what Utah or Texas would do. There are specific statutes for abandonment in different states. In Utah, though, it's like abandonment of the house for more than 2 years, or failure to pay some kind of financial support for more than 6 months. I mean, it's like you leave and go away. You know, you're like maybe strung out on drugs, and you just like, absolutely. That's when the word abandonment comes in. It's literally usually something like that, like very, very specific to you just like fled and left for some reason.
Right.
So the more non-drastic thought of that is, what happens if I leave the house when I'm just thinking about a divorce?
Right.
Well, there's a lot of connotations with that, right? Because it depends on your state. Like, how do they come to determine custody? How do they determine who's been the primary parent? And a lot of times, especially by the time you get to court, it's been months in the making. You usually can't get to court right away. Yeah. And most states, most courts are really going to want to do consistency. They're going to want to do whatever they can do to show, you know, hey, this is what we've been doing. Therefore, the court kind of wants to stay on that trajectory. So if you voluntarily and just leave the house without an agreement in place with your spouse, and all of a sudden your spouse is controlling the time, deciding when you get to see your kids, then it's not going to be considered abandonment. No court's going to believe that. But it is going to be this maybe pattern that the court's going to be able to say, well, you know, you've only seen the kids every other weekend, even though mom's the one who kind of, you know, dictated that. So the court might say, well, you know, for continuity's sake, we're just going to keep with that. One of the things I say, though, is it's never an okay to stay in the house to create conflict. So if you're going to stay in the house because you want to make sure that you have, you know, as much time with your kids, that you can help as much, you need to decrease the conflict, which means specifically, you know, if we're talking specifically to men, like, move out of the master bedroom. You know, that's just chivalrous, right? Like, don't be the one to where you move out, like you go to the couch or you go to the guest room, because it doesn't matter what room you're in the house, you know, just go to another room. Respect boundaries. So if you guys are talking about divorce and you're going to stay in this house, you have to respect boundaries. All of a sudden, you don't get to go through her journal. You don't get to go through her phone. You know, you have to be really careful about, you know, reading emails and stuff like that, because the court's not going to like that if you're, you know, in the house not wanting to leave, but then you're creating conflict that's causing somebody. So my thing is it's okay to stay in the house if you want to make sure that you get something in writing regarding custody and parent time, but you need to decrease the conflict. So go to separate rooms, create boundaries, respect boundaries, and then talk to your spouse about setting up a schedule. So, you know, like, hey, every other day, I'll be responsible for the kids. You know, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I got them. Tuesday, you know, and that way you can then have this schedule, even though you're living in the same house, to really make sure that you're doing equal amounts of whatever you need to do for the kids, for their sake. And then a lot of times, if you can just sit down and get something in writing to say, hey, I'll move out, but this is my parent time, and you feel comfortable with that, even if it's not like an official court order, something in writing where you both sign it is going to have a lot of weight in court. So if you can really get your spouse to sit down and say, you know what, if you move out, because this will decrease conflict, you go get an apartment, but I'll let you have the kids, you know, this much time. And you're like, yeah, this sounds great. I like this. Get it in writing, sign it, and then go ahead and move forward with that. Again, though, I'm going to say the best thing to do is talk to an attorney in your area before you make that hard decision.
Yeah. So it sounds like getting something in place is definitely recommended before you do anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just hard because you move out of the house, you're trying to decrease conflict, trying to, you know, be the bigger person, whatever.
Right.
But what you're doing without an agreement, especially with the kids, is you're giving the person who now has the house with the kids the ability to dictate your time.
Right.
And why should you allow that? Like, you're the father, or you're
Right.
you're just as equal of a parent, and so you need to make sure you protect that.
No, if that happens, let's say, so you do move out, and they are dictating, can't that be held against them as well? Like,
yeah,
if they're,
it can.
yeah.
If they're dictating when you can see them, this is some advice that I can give you. Ask for time all the time, and do it in writing. Show those no's. Take journal. So every time you ask and you know that parent says no, you have it in writing that she said no. Second, hire an attorney immediately.
Yeah.
So that you guys can file motions with the court, so you can get into court as quickly as possible to quash that, because you don't want somebody to dictate your parent time. The third tip I'm going to give you, if you've moved out, is you need to show up as an equal parent. If you want to, I always say this, if you want equal time, you better show me you're an equal parent. Right. Meaning, you need to be showing up for the doctor's appointment. You need to know those teachers at school. You need to be emailing them. You need to show up. And a lot of times we get, especially men who say, well, I don't know who their teachers are, or they just contact the parent, you know, the mom, and, you know, she doesn't give me that information. Right. That's a horrible excuse. Guess what? You can go to the school, you can find out who the teacher is, you can make the effort. No more do you get to make the excuse of, well, my wife just always gave me that information, and now she's withholding it. That's a bad excuse. It's just like, oh, she signed him up for soccer and I don't have the soccer schedule. Right. I get that that's bad, but at the end of the day, go get the soccer schedule. You can do it. And so you just have to be more of a proactive parent, and you got to show that you're willing to do it if you want to go to court and show that you can have and deal with 50-50 time, or, you know, a very generous parent time schedule.
No, in terms of like extracurriculars, like there's things that, I try to make everything. The only time I don't typically is if it's a work thing where I'm out and I can't make it. But there are times when my other half of the equation, trying to be nice, doesn't show up to things. Now, obviously journal and document, that's a huge thing. And I tell guys all the time, document. How much of that can be, like, how much is that looked at when you go through, let's say, a custody trial? Like, do they really care if she's not at everything or I'm not at everything? Like, in terms of extracurriculars, I'm not necessarily talking doctor's appointments, but like, football games or whatever, you know what I mean?
I think if you are fighting for custody, it is a factor that the court's going to want to see that you're an active participant in your child's life. And so, you know, you making that effort to make sure you're there and showing up for your kids is going to be really, really important. Is it going to be like horrible if you don't show up to a game and no, because they understand that. Yeah. But it is going to be important to show that you support your kids. So one of the things we get a lot is, and again, gender roles can switch on this, but I am going to say that this is mostly typical with men, is that they have less than 50-50 time. So they pay, you know, a lot of child support. And then, so in Utah, child support's paid, but extracurricular is different.
Oh.
So you usually pay 50-50 of extracurricular activities as long as you agree. And a lot of times we see where, dads come back and we're like, well, I'm paying her child support. I'm not going to pay for these extracurricular activities. And what that does is that hurts your child. And that can be used against you. And the fact that the court's like, it's all benefiting your kids. Why are you placating this?
Right.
And in some states like California, that's all lumped in together. Like they think of that. So their child support amounts are a little bit higher, but in Utah, it's not. Medical, extracurricular, and daycare are all out of child support. So you want to know that.
Yeah.
And you want to kind of make sure that you understand that, because in Utah, I'm going to tell my dads, you need to show that you want to support your kids in their extracurricular, especially if they've like been playing piano for the last, you should pay half of their piano lessons going forward. Like it shouldn't be all of a sudden this thing where you're like, well, I'm giving your mom child support, I don't want to pay anymore. I think that can be used against you.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I understand laws are what they are, and things are the way they are and all that good stuff, but and obviously you want to do what's best for your future as a parent, if you intend to stay in their lives, which I don't think there's any man that I've come across in my groups that have been like, fuck it, I'm walking away. Most guys will want to, do their part. But I can tell you from my perspective, I pay a fucking lot of money in child support.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't know if our extracurriculars, shame upon me, because I don't know. I don't think that's like, I don't think I don't remember being called out like, you have to pay half of this. I don't remember that. And I know childcare is included with child support in Pennsylvania. But there seems to me like the calculations that are used, and I don't think it's anti-men. I just think men are typically the higher earners. But these calculations and these rules and laws, they seem to be asinine, quite frankly. And they're based on what? I don't know. And who determines, like, who came up with these formulas? And the thing that little bit irks me a little bit. I mean, it is what it is. I pay it and it's fine, whatever. But there's no control over it. Like, she could be using that to buy crack. Like, she's not, to my knowledge, she's not a crackhead, but I mean, she could be buying. I've seen a woman come out with new purses and new jackets and stuff. I'm not saying she's using a child support for that. I don't know, but she certainly has some cushion to do so.
Right.
So is there any, I think, or do you know of any sort of, I guess, rules or talk of changing how child support's calculated or how it's used? Or is it just like, just bend over, buddy? Like, that's sorry for your luck. Like,
well, what's so funny is let me get on my soapbox for just 2 minutes, if you'll indulge me.
Absolutely.
Because if we want to go all the way back to when the United States was created, we were based off of a patriarchal society.
True.
So it was that men were the protector, they were the wage earners, they killed the bears, and the women were the caregivers, and that they stayed home with the children. It's the way that our country was kind of laid out, and it was basically this theory up until about the 1960s. A lot of child support laws, no joke, are pretty much back in the 1960s. I mean, Utah is still very backwards with it. And if you look at it, you're right. The way that most states have done child support is the shift of income from the higher earner to the lower earner. And sometimes they're tied to your custody, and sometimes they're not. Like in Texas, it's not tied to your custody. It is just the higher earner pays what they're going to come to a number. See, in Utah, what's frustrating is it's tied to literally the number of overnights you have. Right. So, and we don't have a presumption of custody. So it causes both sides to fight for a lot of times the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
You got the women fighting because they need more money.
Right.
And then you've got the dads fighting because they want to pay less money.
Yeah.
That's so wrong. If you just had a presumption of custody, or you took away the child support amount pursuant to custody, this would go away. But the way that it works is that child support is literally to allow your kids to live some semblance of the way that they lived in the marriage at both homes. They do not want somebody going from the penthouse to the poorhouse. I mean, Kelly Clarkson's paying over $150,000 a month in child support, when her husband has been the manager of some of the biggest prolific acts, and is capable of making all this money. But if he wants to be able to buy a house in Malibu with Kelly Clarkson, the only way he's going to do that is if he is getting enough money to be able to supplement that. Because it doesn't matter if he's making $200,000 a year, he's not going to afford a house in Malibu. So I use that as an example just to kind of give you a little bit of understanding. It's not gender bias.
No, I don't believe that. Yeah, no, I don't believe that at all. Yeah,
right.
For sure. No, I definitely don't think it's a man haters club. And we'll get into some of that too a little bit as we go further. Because I think there is this skewed view that is the case, that men are always getting screwed, and we'll get into that. No, I think it's just I'm
there is no way that they can regulate how child support is spent. It just would not work. If they had to do an accounting every month, kind of like guardianships have to do with the conservatorship or the conservator, just would not work.
I wonder if like flex spending for like medical care, like, I can't, that money gets set aside and I can only use it for like, medical shit. Like, I would think there could be a way, and maybe this is being petty, but I don't know, man. I pay a lot of money.
That just means you make a lot of money.
Well, yeah, I do okay, but here's the thing, like, and this is I'm at peace with this, but let's be real here. I didn't make this decision, right? Like, and so why am I having to pay all this money? Now, granted, I don't want her, but she does okay for herself too. I mean, I don't want my kids living in a box. They wouldn't anyway, like whatever the scenario, but it just seems a little, where's the incentive to stay married? You know what I mean? It seems like a skewed situation where it's like, I'm not happy, I'm gone, and there's so many benefits to being gone anyway. I'm gonna get all your money, and my retirement, forget about it. Like, the debt that was left upon me. I mean, again, I probably don't sound like I'm at peace with this, but I mostly am at peace with this. I mean, because I can't do anything about it, but it just doesn't seem, I don't know, life's not fair and all that good shit, but like, it just doesn't seem very fucking fair to me.
It only seems like that when you have a very skewed marriage, in the fact that you were the primary earner and you created all the money. And then you're right, she divorces you and she gets half of it. It's the same in Utah. We're an equitable state. She's going to get half, whether she earned $1 or not.
Right. And I think, in the 60s or the 50s or maybe even the 70s, like that, it seemed appropriate. But now women are out there, they're earning, and it just doesn't seem to me. And again, I know it's not gender biased. I know that. I believe that. But it is skewed because the fucked up reasons that women make less in this country. And that's a whole other discussion. But it doesn't seem like it's the same anymore. Like, why are you getting half of my retirement when you're capable of earning your own retirement? Like, and like, you didn't put a lot back, even though I fucking told you numerous times. And so there's a huge disparity in retirement accounts, and now you get to siphon out of mine. This is definitely going down a rabbit hole I didn't intend to go down. But.
And I hear this story all the time, and just like you said, is it fair? I don't know. But on the other hand, my husband's a doctor, but if we got divorced, I put him through residency. I put him through medical school. Like, because of that, we're in a huge, better position. I make more money than my husband. And at the end of the day, if he chose to left me, I have 5 businesses I run, I would feel the same way too.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that the laws are left to be like what they say fair. I mean, I always say that equitable is not fair. In fact, equitable is literally to help somebody live some semblance outside the marriage, inside the marriage, even if they were the one who chose to leave the marriage.
Something about that just seems wrong to me. It is what it is, and I'm powerless, but I guess this is definitely a rabbit hole, and we'll stop with this. I don't mean to go down this far, but like, what is the fucking incentive to get married nowadays? Honestly, if you're a high income earner, man or woman, and a prenup is not like discussed, like why would anybody fucking get married?
Well, marriage rates are going down,
yeah.
and I think marriage age is going up. I think for this very, very reason.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously humans want companionship and commitment.
Sure.
That's just kind of our human nature. So that's why marriage is still looked at as some kind of sanctity of an act.
Yeah.
But I also do think that the paradigm of divorce is going to shift in the next 20 years. And we're going to see that because more women are working than ever before.
Yeah,
and with this, with us continuing climbing the corporate ladder, breaking glass ceilings, which I'm just going to say it's been hard in the last 30 years for a woman to even compare to what a man could make.
No question.
So, but we're getting there. We're fighting for it. And so I do see that we are going to see a difference in divorce where it's not going to be this drastic, split. But in Utah, we have one of the highest divorce rates in the country because we have one of the highest marriage rates. And our marriage age is still lower than the general, so I do feel like it's going to take Utah longer to get kind of the rest of the country. But eventually we're going to start seeing this where the divorce rate's actually going to start going down a little bit. And conflicted divorce is probably going to go down as well because it's going to be two earners, higher wealth, which I always find when we have these high asset divorces, contention actually tends to go down a little bit. It's crazy how we get these low asset, low income people that they're just fighting over kids and money. And so I do see that we're going to be shifting a little bit. And I agree with you. The laws are going to have to kind of catch up a little bit.
Yeah.
But we have legislators that get voted in from rural Utah who don't even have college degrees, who don't even care about family law, so they're drafting the, more free land and guns. I mean,
right.
I mean, I have talked all the time about just running for Congress, state Congress, even though that sounds horrible, for one term so that I can get in there and fix our family law. We just need more people to stand up and do that. And we're going to get there, and people like you voicing it is going to help hopefully move a little bit more to change. But I get it. Our laws are old. We're like living in Mad Men age.
True.
Remember the show Mad Men?
Yeah.
And we need to get out of that. I mean, Utah, you can still get alimony for the length of the marriage.
Wow.
And a lot of it because it's a shift of income. So I don't necessarily think no alimony is the way to go.
No, I mean, it's fair.
But I'm talking I'm supportive of like rehabilitative, like, hey, I'm going to give you 3-4 years so you can go to school or, get your, and I'm all about empowering women to say you can work. This is awesome. This helps you with your worthiness and your self-worth and, just finding purpose, and then I'm always like telling my men, hey, you make good money. You will always make more money than her. Like, look at this as just an opportunity to just like, usually the divorce saved you money because she was spending it all in the marriage anyway. So you can look at the benefits.
And honestly, this isn't my raison d'etre. Like, this isn't like why I do this. It's just, it is a frustration that I have. And it's not a focus. But I know some guys are getting raked over the coals, but let's move on because I could talk about this forever. And I'm sure some women too. But let's talk about filing first. I hear all the time, you got to file first. It puts you in the driver's seat. It allows you to do different things. And is that true? Should you file first? And if so, what's the advantages?
I was going to say, so I have a podcast here, this, No One Dies from Divorce. And we've started doing this mini series, which I think your listeners would appreciate as well, where we're doing just 10 minutes and I'm just giving you like straight up, hey, here's a question and I'm answering it. So go check that out if you're interested. But one of those questions we get asked all the time, doesn't matter if I file first. In most situations, it's not going to matter. And the reason why is because even if you're the driving person to start the divorce and they write all this stuff that they want in their petition for divorce, you're going to be able to counter petition and you're going to write everything you want in your petition as well. It depends, like in trial, like if you go all the way to trial, which in Utah, like we maybe go to trial about 3% of all of our cases. The person that files first is called the petitioner, and they get to present their case first.
All right.
But you get to then present your case. They get to do their reply, and then you get to do your counter reply. So you actually get the last word if you're the counter petitioner. So in most times, it's not the race to the courthouse that's going to matter in a divorce.
Right.
Now, for other things, other lawsuits, maybe. Again, I can only speak to Utah and Texas.
Sure.
And so you probably want to specifically make sure you're researching this and talking to an attorney in your county. But every 50 states, every county, when you file for divorce, you have the opportunity to be heard too. You're never going to lose that opportunity just because you don't file first. The one thing I will say about the benefit of filing first, you control the timeline. So a lot of times, we're thinking, oh, we want to be amicable. We want to try to work it out. And so I'm not going to file yet. But what happens is you waste time because without filing, you don't have a set timeline of when things have to start going. So I always tell my clients, I'm like, hey, if this is going to happen, let's file, but maybe not serve the other party. And then you can work together because that sets timelines. It sets when things have to start moving. And if things just don't go well, we have the case filed so we can, immediately file something for whatever we need.
Right.
So you it kind of gives you a little bit of power of just kind of controlling the time, especially if you have a party that's like, I don't want a divorce. I'm going to drag this out as long as possible. Right. I like the joint bank account, or I like my situation,
Right.
We get a lot of times where, one party's living the dream, they don't have to work. They get all the money and they get to go to the gym every day, and so why would they want to move this forward?
Yeah.
Well, the way to stop that is file, get them served, and it's going to start the process where they don't get to just delay.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Well, and I thought that there was some advantages, but it doesn't sound like it's not the end of the world if you don't, but it doesn't, it may help a little bit if you do decide to move forward first. There are some advantages.
If you want to be the one to get that party served, then you better file first. Yeah. Because once it's only the first party that has to be served. You usually don't have to serve a counter petition because you just email it to them, or whatever your court rules allow, email. But so if you want to be the one where, a process server shows up at her door and, or her work, which I never recommend unless you can't find that person. But there's that's basically, and usually when you file first, you have to pay the big fee. In Utah, it's $344 to file for divorce. So when you file first, you pay that. As a counter petition, you only have to pay the $100 fee. So
interesting.
About that.
Yeah, I think Pennsylvania is somewhat similar, at least where we're at. I think it's like a $375 fee or something. And yeah, she had to pay that one, but she's got plenty of money to be able to pay it now. All right, so let's. I got a lot of questions. Anytime I reach out to my group and say, "Hey, I'm gonna interview a lawyer. What do you got?" And some of these are a bit off the wall, and some of them we sort of covered already, but we'll go down the list. So this is a long question, but I think we kind of answered this one. Is has or will the court system? I'm going to read it I'm going to try and correct it as I read it. Will the court system catch up to the fact that men love their children, and now more than ever, the need for the legal system to have an unbiased analysis regarding custody, finances, needs, etc. We've kind of covered that.
Yeah.
It's a bit behind, but I don't think it's necessarily skewed against men. I think it's skewed against a higher earner. But I will question whether or not you think, in terms of custody, do you think there is a bias there? I don't think so either. I think for in Pennsylvania, or at least in York County, Pennsylvania, where I'm at, 50-50 is pretty much the norm, unless there's some kind of circumstance, some extreme circumstance. But in terms of custody, how is it in Utah? Is 50-50 more the norm? Is it really tough to get for men? Like, what are you seeing there? And same for Texas.
So Utah doesn't have a presumption of custody, which I kind of alluded to,
Right.
which causes more people to fight over it. And because child support is tied directly to custody, I think that's why we fight more about, we have to fight a little bit harder for men, and women fight a little bit harder because, they get less child support if they get 50-50. I think that's backwards. We also still in Utah are considered a primary caretaker state. So they look at who's been the primary caretaker of the children. Well, I've always said this. I believe primary caretaker is a gender biased role. It really is. Again, when you look at a patriarchal society, like, women have been raised to be the nurturers, who's cooking them dinner, who's doing their homework, who's taking them to the doctor. And I work full time, but I still do that. I just want to. I want to be part. So I feel like, and it's not that my husband's any less of a father or any less because he doesn't do that. Right. That's just kind of how we define that. Well, in a divorce, we would have to look at that, and I would be deemed the primary caretaker, which could be used against my husband in getting equal custody. All the studies that have come out in the 90s and 2000s have shown that children, to be successful in divorce, need frequent and continuous contact with both parents. And the courts are seeing that. So we are definitely on a pendulum swing to know that men's fathers' roles in kids' life are just as important as moms. And so I do see that everywhere. Texas, they start at 50-50, and then you have to decide. So I think that's where the whole country should go. We should start at 50-50, and then we can come and say why 50-50 is not in the best interest of the children. Right. They have proven in the states that have a presumption of 50-50, conflict goes down, and even divorce rates go down, because they're not having to worry about this or think about this. They know that if a divorce happens, they're not going to lose their kids. It just decreases conflict. And I support that because, I know a lot of times emotions run high in divorce. And a lot of times you make decisions that are not sound for you or your family. And because of that, a lot of times the children are thrown into those emotional decisions, and they shouldn't. Your kids should be able to love both parents, have good relationships with both of them, whether the adults can get along or not. And so if we took away the ability to fight over custody and we just had this presumption, it would really help that to know, hey, this is what it's going to be. And like you, in Pennsylvania, it sounds like, they start at 50-50, but child support's not going to change based off of that. What that does too is it stops this fighting for more custody because they are going to get more money. Because I think that that's wrong, and that is not helping children. So we're getting there. It's just slow. Our legislation in Utah, there was a legislator that fought so hard for a 50-50 presumption this year, and so many people fought against it, including tons of family lawyers. And I think personally that a lot of the people that fought against it were worried that it would take away their business. And I'm just like, that's bullcrap. Every child has the right to be a part of their mom and dad's life, and we need to stop allowing for fights. There are some situations where 50-50 doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things. So a couple tips. If you want 50-50, you need to live close to your spouse. You just have to.
Yeah.
So, if you want to say, oh, I want to move 30 minutes away because I don't want to be by her or whatever.
Right.
No, you have to be, the ultimate is 8 miles, 20 max, because you got to get your kids to school 50% of the time. And then the second tip I'm going to give you is, if you want to be an equal parent, you better show up as an equal parent, which means when you're doing 50-50, you better be doing your kids' homework. You better be actively involved in their extracurricular. You better be an equal parent. I don't care if you're going to work every day. Right. And that's what you've done. The entire things change, and you got to show up as an equal parent. If you do those two things, you should have equal time with your kids. It makes sense.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think there are, like you said, there are numerous studies that show the importance of a father's involvement. And again, I also think it is changing, perhaps slowly, but it is changing. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So this one, I don't, maybe, I'm sure you probably deal with this, but they ask the best ways to protect the business if you have one during a divorce. And this is outside of my realm of even, I wouldn't know where to begin. So
let me give you a couple tips. Don't put your spouse on the business. Like a lot of times in an LLC, they want a minority shareholder. And so you'll put your spouse as a 2% shareholder for tax purposes. Don't do it. Work with your accountant to figure out the best way. But when your spouse is entangled in your business, it's so hard to unravel that when a divorce is going to happen. Second of all, if your spouse works for the business, pay her. If you show that you have a trajectory of paying her during her work, then it's going to be hard for her to come to court and say, well, I helped build this business. I therefore should get half of it.
Right.
Because you can come back and say, but I paid her for her services to the level that that helps. Second of all, have divorce clauses. So in my operating agreement, if I have a partner, I have divorce clauses that force it so that if my partner gets a divorce, I'm not going to be partners with his wife, right? So make sure you protect yourself that way. The other thing is post-nups are really, really important on this factor to really understand the unwinding of the business. The third thing is don't do anything with your business until you talk to an attorney. So for example, don't go out and say, I'm going to get a business valuation. I want to know how much my business is worth because my wife wants half of it. Don't do that without an attorney, because what happens is you have some independent business evaluator who doesn't really understand you're doing it for divorce purposes. They're going to value your business as much as possible, and then your spouse will never let that go, and they want half of it. So don't do that.
Gotcha.
Those are just a few tips.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'm fortunate. I don't have to deal with that. I think that would be an extra layer of nightmare that I would not want.
Yeah.
So the next one is, we kind of touched on this one. He asked, can I move out and get my own apartment before the divorce? And we kind of touched on that. As long as there's an agreement in place, you're better off than just doing it outright. So we kind of
just get a written agreement with your spouse that says if you move out, that the kids are going to be able to stay in the apartment with you, or get a nesting agreement. So one of the ways you could do it is keep the kids in the house. You get your apartment, but you get to come to the house 50% of the time, and she leaves.
Yeah.
Or she goes to the apartment, or she goes to her mom's, or something like that. So you want to have something in writing to really protect yourself. Because unfortunately, you just can't get into court quick. Yeah. So it could be 5 months before you get into court, and you've only seen your kids dictated by her. We don't want that. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one is, I think this one's pretty simple. What should and should not be done legally? Well, maybe it's not so simple. After a spouse requests divorce, requests it seems like that's not, I mean, there's nothing formal there from requests. So maybe we'll look at it in a couple ways. File first seems to be a question. So should this man go file first if she says I want a divorce? And then if not, I guess, what do you wait it out? I mean, I don't know. What would you do in that kind of a situation?
So if she just comes to you and just says, hey, I'm done, I want a divorce, the first thing you need to do is go talk to an attorney.
Yeah.
Pay for a consultation with a good family law attorney. It will be the best money you've spent on an hour to really understand your rights,
Yeah.
to protect you, your future, and your family. Even if you decide you don't need an attorney in the future, go meet with an attorney.
Yeah.
Legally, if she serves you with documents, that usually means that you guys are not sitting down working things out. Because, you know, if you're going to have an amicable divorce, usually they're like, you're sitting and you're talking about it and you're like, okay. But if they've like gone, filed, and served you legally, then there's going to be some fighting involved. Go talk to an attorney. I mean, you just have to. If she served you legally, you have a certain amount of time to answer that back. So you don't want to miss that deadline. You could get defaulted, and that is never good. So you want to go talk to an attorney. You want to find out your legal rights so that you can then make the decision that's best for you. At the end of the day, if this is going to be a battle, hiring an attorney is the best thing you can do. And in my book, I have a whole chapter about what you need to know to hire an attorney. Like, so go find one. You know, and just because you hire an attorney, it doesn't mean it's going to become this expensive mad mess. If you hire the right attorney, if you hire the attorney that needs your work, they're going to bill you because they need your work. Go find an attorney that wants your work because they're good at what they do. They don't need your work. There's a big difference.
Yeah, that can be a tricky thing. So moving on, this is tricky without, I should have got more context or info on this one, but he's asking, why do I pay the maximum in child support when my ex makes $30,000 more a year than I do? Hell if I know.
Well, in Utah, the way that our calculation is even if that higher spouse, you know, but if she has more overnights than you will pay child support, even if you make less. I don't know what state you're in. I don't know what specifically they're talking about, but what I'm going to guess is he has less custody and they do an equitable amount of child support. I'm going to guess that, but again, like Texas, you can have 50-50 and you're going to still pay this. It's a flat amount. You're going to know it's the higher earner. This is how much you pay, the percentage of your income, boom. So it doesn't matter your custody. So it just depends on your state.
Gotcha. Okay. Next one's a little, I'll cut this one down. But essentially he's saying his son will be 17 in July, but the son wants to live with him. He says, I know the courts don't like split custody, but I don't see that that's not true. Not at all, at least not where I'm at. But see, is this is only 1 year away from adulthood, what are the chances they will listen to what my son wants? I know in Pennsylvania, and again, this is probably state dependent. I think at 14, they start weighing what a child wants pretty heavily. So I would think at 17, they would definitely weigh pretty heavily where a child would want to live. Is that the case in Utah and Texas?
Yeah. So the age is 14. In Texas, when I practiced there, we were able to do actual affidavits by 14-year-olds or older. I can't say if that's exactly how they do it now, but in Utah, the statute says that they may take into deference a 14-year-old or above. It's always may, because they're going to look at best interest, because a 14-year-old can still be manipulated.
Yes.
But a 17-year-old, the court is never going to say yes or no, you know, unless the mom lives in Florida and the 17, you know, the dad lives in Utah, then maybe they'll say, no, we're not moving you out to Florida for your senior year just because you think it will be good for you. We're, you know, so I have seen that situation. But other than that, if you live in the same state, that 17-year-old wants to stay with their dad, the Utah courts are going to support that. And split custody, actually in those cases, is very common, to where, you know, a younger child will go back and forth between the parents, but the 17-year-old just like, I'm going to stay with dad or mom, or
okay.
And we'll do a modified child support to kind of like, we don't specifically have like a child support that would do like one custody to one parent and then split
Right.
like joint custody to another. But we maneuver it to come up with it.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I missed that part of the question. He has other children that will probably be. I guess that's what he was saying by split. They would probably be a 50-50 scenario, but the 17-year-old wouldn't. Okay. So this one's a little bit of an oddball, and it asks how to address car insurance when it's not addressed in child support. I wouldn't think that is addressed in child support ever, or anything in divorce or whatever. Like, it seems to me that, like, if she has a car and she wants insurance, then she needs to go get it. Like, I don't, the courts they don't care about car insurance, do they?
So again, if you're in a state like Utah where it's based off of overnight and you're sharing 50-50, I always suggest that you split insurance 50-50, because again, your child support is going to be drastically lower. But if you're in a state that it doesn't matter custody, and you're paying, the max child support, then I would exactly say that this is what child support's for, and therefore mom or whoever's receiving the child support can pay for that. Those are things that a lot of people don't think about, that I think about every time that we go to mediation. So
we talking health insurance or car insurance? Because
car insurance.
Oh, really? I wouldn't even think that was factored in.
I do it. It's not something that is automatic, because health insurance is just split 50-50, no matter what your custody is. That's Utah. But car insurance is something that a lot of attorneys wouldn't even think about it. And I always talk about it because it's important.
Yeah, it is. I just wouldn't think the courts would care or it would factor in. It's interesting. I didn't know.
And if, the dad's going to buy the car, I would want the dad to pay for the insurance to make sure it's covered. One of the things we get is we're like, well, we should split the insurance and just pay the insurance company. And then what if she's not paying and all of a sudden your kid gets in a car accident and isn't covered on health insurance? I would never want to do that. So especially if it's you that paid for the car, my last thought is make your kid pay for it. I bought my car when I was 17. I paid for my car insurance.
Yeah.
We live in a day and age where this has become like where, oh, I'm going to pay for my kid. I'm like, why? Like in a divorce, especially, like your kid can spend, figure out $120 for his car insurance every month if the parents aren't going to be able to come to an agreement to pay for it.
Yeah, true. Very good point. The next one we're going to skip. I want to say that one to the end. So we'll move on to number 9 there. Who decides who stays in the house, and how do you force her to show the ability to refinance before having to move out? Well, let's address the first part. Who decides who stays in the house? That's a good question. I didn't have that issue. Mine happily ran away. Wasn't so happy at the time, but this is my house. It was before marriage, so she left. But let's say you bought a house together and she wants a divorce. Like, how do you decide that?
So there's a myriad of factors, but I always do like to tell people that you make the most money in a house if the other party stays in it and buys you out. So people don't think about that. So I'm like, so what's most important for you? To keep the house because of whatever, or to get as much money out of the house as possible? And if that's the answer, then just let her keep it. However, you do have to show that she's going to be able to refinance it. But the good news is usually you only need 3 months of child support and alimony to be able to prove to a loan officer that you can then get a refinance. But it's a myriad of factors. If it's a very expensive house and she's going to have to pull out a huge mortgage to be able to pay you out, I always encourage my clients to say no, because that's going to make her need for alimony go up. So I'm like, let's just sell it or you keep it. So it's just every circumstance can be a little bit different. And again, you just kind of want to decide what's best for you and what is actual reality that can be done with it. If you put money in the house prior to marriage, just like your situation, you want to know that.
Yep.
And you want to get the statements to show that, because in Utah, I can probably get you that money back, which will be helpful. So, you just kind of want to, houses can be great And also, you know, a lot of times they're like, oh, I want my spouse to keep it because, you know, I don't want my kids to be uprooted. And I always laugh because I'm like, well, you're going to have to go buy another house and they're going to be spending 50% of the time at your house. Like, what's the difference of the kids? Don't care where they live. They want to be able to have a room, you know, with their stuff. And so, you know, divorce is already uprooting them a little bit. Like, staying in the family home is not necessarily the comfort that the kids need. So what you need to do is what's the best. You know, so a lot of men want to be the nice guy and they want to be like, I'll let my wife stay in the house and she won't have to refinance it for 3 or 4 years. But it keeps him from being able to buy a house. So he's living in the apartment. Well, then all of a sudden you're like, your kids are like getting older and like, I don't want to go to the apartment. I'm just going to stay in my room in my house. Well, you gotta set yourself up to a situation where your kids are not feeling like, again, they're going from the penthouse to the poorhouse. So you got to make the decision that allows you to have some kind of equality to what, you know, your spouse is going to be living in as well.
Gotcha. I'm tempted to skip the next one too, because that's got a bit of a connotation. We'll get to that one towards the end as well. This one is a pretty interesting one. And I think it probably, well, I mean, it ties into a few of these perhaps, but when a judge is demonstrating judicial bias and you file a complaint, why does the judge have the choice to continue to supervise the case? If there is clear evidence of bias, how are things going to proceed after the complaint? Yeah, what a interesting question. I'm sure you must deal with that or have dealt with that. What do you do when a judge?
Asking judges to recuse themselves is probably something that you only do on the most rarest occasions. Because first of all, they're always going to seem biased to one party because one party is not getting what they want, especially in divorce. They get that every day. They get people that hate them every day.
Oh, I'm sure.
They get complaints all the time. So when you write a formal complaint and you ask them to recuse themselves, if they did it for your case, then people are just going to file complaints and they're going to have to recuse themselves for all these cases. They're just not going to do that. In Utah, when you file a formal complaint, the judge does have the right to recuse themselves, but the presiding judge reviews it and usually consults with them to decide if it's in the best interest for them to do that. But I've never seen it happen.
I was going to say, have you ever seen it happen?
Only in cases where they have some connection with the client, you know, like not like they're in the same neighborhood or something like that, which we've had that before. But other, you know, I've had judges that, you know, are my close personal friends and they've recused themselves because, you know, I did a mentorship with them or something like that, like, or an internship, like, but other than that, like specifically to the person, I just don't feel whatever your bias is going to hold a lot of weight. If you have a smart attorney, they understand these biases and they can help maneuver to what court to file in if possible, to possibly avoid the judge. And there's different maneuvers that way. You know, sometimes we filed for divorce, realized we got a really bad commissioner for this or a judge, and we've dismissed the divorce and then refiled again. That's very, very rare, but and it's all random. Like we have 5 commissioners in the Salt Lake City area. I mean, like when you file, you randomly get one, you know. Luckily now we don't, you know, I feel like I wouldn't be sad if we got any commissioners in the state right now. I feel like we've got a pretty good group of them and they do a pretty good job. So this is just kind of something you want to tread lightly, and I hope you have a good attorney. If you have an attorney that's like, oh yeah, let's file this because, you know, we should try to get this judge recused, you might want to scratch your chin and wonder why the attorney is so confident to that, because that makes me nervous. I mean, I get along with all the judges, all the commissioners, because I'm respectful to them, and I help my clients prepare to know what their judge or their commissioner may or may not do. And it's very different and subjective to every commissioner and judge. So you just have to have a good attorney that's helping you prepare so you can best know what's, good. The last advice I'm going to give you, if you get a bad judge, guess what? Settle. Don't throw your dice at a bad judge. Like, do whatever you need to do to settle. And it might be that you get to, have to like negotiate a little bit and give up a few things. But if you have a bad judge and you're putting all your dice and going to trial on them, then you're risking a lot more than if you were to sit down and just be like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
I'll just settle.
Okay. I'm unfortunate. I'm still not divorced. It's a whole long story, but I haven't had to deal with judges, thankfully.
That's good.
This one is similar to one that we talked about earlier in terms of abandonment and moving out, but there's a little bit of a twist on this one. It says, if I move out due to a toxic environment, does that limit my rights? Yeah. Who defines toxic, I guess, is one of the questions. Like,
if you're in a situation where your spouse likes to make stories up, so she, you hit me, or, she's recording you, or she's being manipulative, sometimes the choice is to move out to avoid that and protect yourself. And I will always recommend that. But you need to hire an attorney immediately so we can get orders in the court, so we can get to a hearing, so we can get you parent time. So you can do that. And just because you moved out doesn't mean you're going to hurt your case. What it will do, though, is if you move out and you don't file anything for 6 months, then the court's going to be like, well, what were you doing for 6 months? And that's when the court's not going to like that. So you can move out, but it needs to be with your guys of your attorney, and that you guys are getting ready to move forward on getting you rights in writing.
Okay. Well, this one comes up a lot, and it's I understand why, and I get the frustration, but he asks if extramarital affairs and pregnancy by an affair partner matter. And the answer is mostly no. Most states don't care about these things. I think there are a handful of states. I don't know which ones they are, but most states. Is Utah one of them? Oh, Interesting.
Yeah, so Utah is a no-fault state. However, we have a caveat in the statute that allows for fault in 5 different areas to affect, and if you have to prove 2 things for an affair. You have to prove that the affair was sexual in nature and it was the primary factor to the demise of the marriage. Clearly, if they have an affair and they get pregnant, that's going to be considered a primary factor. And if the court can find that, they can assign fault, and then they can use it to affect somebody's alimony, whether it's the length or the amount. I actually was the attorney that took that case all the way to the Supreme Court and won it on the basis that I represented the man, the mom had had the affair, and the court found that it was, and the judge specifically found that it was the substantial contributor to the breakdown of the marriage, and they lowered her standard of living, and she got less alimony. She still got a lot, but she got less.
Right.
She appealed it, and the Supreme Court upheld it, saying that it is in the right of the judge and not abuse of discretion to do what he did. So Utah is one of the, I think there's 8 states that allow fault in purposes of divorce. But just like you said, most of the time it doesn't matter. And my case was very, very specific. We had the proof of it. Right. And, pregnancy is going to be, I think, a really big factor for that. But unfortunately, a lot of the states, it's just at the end of the day not going to matter. The court's going to say, now, I know in Utah, if you cohabitate, you don't get alimony. So if that person gets pregnant and moves in with their boyfriend who got him pregnant, then that's going to help you in not having to pay alimony in Utah. So again, it's just state specific, but a lot of times people have cohabitation laws for alimony and the reasons for it to be terminated.
I want to throw in one here that it popped in my head while I was asking another question. And that last question, it looks like I cut it off for some reason. So we'll skip that one. Sorry, buddy. I'll figure that out and ask again later. False allegations is something that comes up from time to time. I had a gentleman who was a part of the group that had issues with false allegations and temporary restraining orders that became extended and became part of background checks apparently in California. And I don't know the ins and outs of all that, but let's just talk false allegations in general. How do you deal with that as a man if you're accused of doing something that you clearly didn't do? How do you fight back and push back against that?
Yeah, it's hard. It's not going to be easy, but you have to prepare your evidence. You have to be recording conversations, make sure you're in a one-party consent state, because if you're in a two-party consent state, you cannot record another person without their consent. So, if you're in California, you cannot have a recorder in your pocket. It's against the law. In Utah, though, you can. So I always tell my clients, have a recorder in your pocket, turn your phone on, record everything, journal, document everything. But in the most extreme cases, first of all, everybody lies in divorce. Everybody embellishes everything. Everybody makes things look like they're way worse. Like all of a sudden, when you spanked your kid 6 years ago, it becomes that you're like this big abuser, or, we get that everybody's emotionally abusive, and we're like, no, duh, like you guys hate each other, like you're yelling at each other, you're calling each other names. That's emotionally abusive in its own right. Yeah. So because of that, a lot of the courts just kind of go tone deaf to it. It's not going to matter. Like, they want to, I spend my divorces to not dwell on the mudslinging as much. Sure. I really focus on like why you're a good parent, why you're a good person, and why the other person is a good parent. And a lot of my clients don't really love that, but then they see the results. No. Because that's what the court wants to see. However, if you're been accused of sexual abuse, say, I deal with these cases. No. You need to get a good attorney, and because it requires a lot of work, especially if you've got a court to believe her, and all of a sudden there's an order now in place, or so you really, unfortunately, you just have to spend the money on a good attorney that understands this and can really walk you through it. And it's not impossible. It can be done. And right now we're leading the charge on a guy in my state that has been accused of sexual abuse, and we've just had to step after step after step, and every time we win and we're getting that direction, but we're now going on almost 2 years and he hasn't seen his kids yet. And our next step would we prove that we proved that he's innocent, but our next step is now some reunification therapy, and our next step is we're going to take this all the way to try to see if we can get a judge to be brave enough to switch custody because of it. Because it's cases like this where we need to really prove that it's not okay, and there's punishments for you doing stuff like that.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Like, is there any punishment for false allegation? Like, if it's proven she just lied, or maybe even he too. We're not infallible, us men. Is there any punishment in any of the states that you know of for false allegations?
It's hard. It's just hard. We get protective orders that have lies in them all the time. Yeah. And it says right on the protective order, you can be charged with perjury for lying on this. I've never seen somebody charged with perjury for it, even though we prove it all the time.
Why is that?
Well, because the courts don't want to keep people that actually need protective orders away from filing them, And the way that they've set it up is eventually, you're going to have your day in court. And if you can prove it, a lot of times they'll give you makeup parent time or whatever. So, but if they punish people for filing protective orders, it's going to keep the people that really need them away from doing it. But but the courts are getting better, like especially with alienation and gatekeeping, of recognizing that drastic action is what takes and stops it. So, we've heard I've seen this happen now in Utah just recently, but timeout, where they flip custody for like a month, and that kid doesn't get contact with the custodial parent. And it just allows that kid to have 30 days with the parent that they think is this horrible person because mom keeps feeding them lies. And it's doing wonders. So there's a lot of research that's coming out with it. And we need more people to go to court and start showing the research, fighting for it. And then we need people to come back on these podcasts and talk about it and tell people about it, so we get more of a movement. I think we're going to get there to where we're going to have more drastic punishments for stuff like this. It's just slow because, again, they don't want to, alienation is hard to prove, right?
Yeah.
Sexual abuse, like, okay, she accused it. Right. They don't want to just say, oh, she's a liar. And, and then all of a sudden these kids are being hurt by it. So it's just a process. And unfortunately, it sucks. It's not fair. And luckily it's the extreme, which I know you probably see the extreme a little bit because those are the people reaching out for help.
Yep.
But that's not the majority, thank goodness. But we just need more people to be coming forward and saying, this is what my story is. So we can start getting out there and we can start pushing for a movement of real change and what to do. And luckily I've seen it. I'm seeing it. It's just slowly.
Yeah, that 30 days swap is genius. I don't know who came up with that, but that's genius, I think. So just out of my own curiosity, and we're going to get to parent alienation next, I think. I was going to save it for last, but it seems like a good segue. But so what happens in that regard is like, is there like a child psychologist who does an evaluation before and after and then reports to the court, or how has that worked? How have you seen it work?
For parental alienation, because it's hard to prove, there's different ways you can do it, but getting an expert that is an expert in parental alienation to come in and review it and look at it is really good. But you need to make sure the evaluator specializes in alienation. If they're just a custody evaluator, they're looking at factors. Right. And a lot of times those best interest factors don't even touch the alienation. And so you can get a result that you're like, what? That's not what I wanted. So you really want somebody to be looking that understands the alienation factors and what they can do to really, really help that. Unfortunately, those experts are a little bit expensive, but if you live in Pennsylvania, there's an amazing expert on it in California. You don't necessarily have to stay within your, state if you're like deciding to leave this charge to really show that this is happening. Go find the experts and bring their research to your state because it's going to move change. Bill Eddy is one of the leading founders in California. He's in San Diego. He's written the book. It's called BIFF, BIFF. But he is the leading expert on alienation. He was a social worker for years, and now he was an attorney doing 15 years of conflict litigation in San Diego. So anyways, it's just people like that really understand what alienation is and can really help you through high conflict personality disorders, and then really kind of understand the lead. If they come in and assess a case, they could write a report that really could lead to change in wherever you are. So it's just stuff like that. Parental alienation is something that's fairly new. So it's even though it's been around for centuries, but it's something that's fairly new in understanding that it's a condition and it needs to be tackled immediately, or it's just going to get worse. So luckily we're getting these amazing people out to really talk about it. Dr. Warshak is a huge, researcher. Like, there are people out there now that are really looking at this specific thing, and their studies are saying exactly what needs to be done. So you need an attorney that is willing to go and get those studies to bring them to court. And it's not the same old argument of, oh, she's just, you're coming with facts and studies and what happens to children. It's going to lead a better case for you in front of the judge.
Yeah, so I guess that's the question is how do you deal with it? And I think as you just keep fighting, right? That's part of it.
Not necessarily keep fighting. Fighting a high conflict personality person, all the time, because is not necessarily the answer. It's actually more of you learning how to deal with a high conflict personality, and being able to then take away their power that they have. So really understanding the condition, knowing what you can do to communicate better and dealing with it will lead you to a much better path. Fighting doesn't necessarily, especially if you have a NPD or a high conflict personality person on the other side,
right,
isn't necessarily what's going to happen, because they're never going to give up.
Sure. No, I meant more in terms of like being in court and like continuing to file and fight in that kind of a manner. I guess that's because I don't know what, I don't know what your options are. Like if there's a custody order in place and the parent, the custodial parent says, well, she doesn't want to come see you, and she's afraid of you or whatever, and I mean, what are your options? You file, right, that they're breaking the order, and then I guess it's not just beating your head against the wall, so to speak, but like also bringing in evidence that supports that they're withholding them for you. They're alienating you. Like I guess that's really your only option, right? Because what else can you do? I mean, certainly learning how to deal with them is an interesting way to look at it, because you're going to have to deal with them anyway. And perhaps there are better ways to figure out how to deal with them in a way that will help you. But in terms of like legally, like I'm very confused by guys who haven't seen their kid. And I have a buddy who didn't see his daughter for like 2 years. I'm very confused by that. Like, why the fuck does the court let that happen? Like, is it, and my guess is because false allegations, and they're like, well, he might be abusive, so let's not. But how do parents get away with that shit? Like, unless there's actual evidence, and I guess maybe it's just the courts, or just processes take forever. But like, I'm baffled by why the courts would allow such a thing. Like, for not allowing a person to see their children in 2 years is fucking disgraceful.
It's horrible, and it's not okay, but it's happening. And you're right. I can't get into court immediately.
No.
For this case that I was telling you about, like, we got an order for unification therapy clear back in May. That was a big win for us. And took her a month and a half to finally make the appointment with the unification therapist. And then the mom canceled and said, I'm not going to do it. And we had to file an order to show cause with contempt, because we can't do anything. Like, we can't just show up at their door and demand parent time, especially with these like sensitive issues. So now we're waiting for another hearing, which I think was another month. I mean, you're absolutely right. Is it fair? No. And, we keep thinking that eventually justice is going to be served. He's either going to get a switch of custody, which, I don't know. That's like, I hope the court's brave enough to do it. And then I hope we get attorney fees, which I think we can, especially on this specific issue. So again, it's horrible. But this is what I can give you: 2 advice. Don't give up. Because it's you need to continually show to your kids that you're fighting for them. If you can contact your kids, always sending them birthday presents, Christmas presents, cards. Like, just because they're saying, I don't want to see you, don't say, well, then fuck them, I'm not going to, they don't get the love from their parent. That's an absolutely wrong thing you can do. Like, because at the end of the day, when your kid gets old enough to recognize that this was mom's issue, they're going to be able to look back and say, oh, Dad, I'm so sorry. And I've seen it in cases where, the kids get older, 18, 19, 20, they find out that it was mom. And now they're like, I'm not talking to mom. Like, she ruined my relationship with my dad. I'm going to be with my dad now. And that's what you want. So you want to consistently fight for your kids, because this isn't their problem. This is her problem. So you need to remember that, and not put your kids in the place of saying, I don't want, fine, I'm just mad at them because they don't want to see me. So keep reaching out to your kids, go to school and eat lunch with them. Go to their extracurricular activities, like make little efforts to show that you're there for them, that you're going to show up, and you're not stepping aside just because they're the crap their mom's feeding them. So it's really important to just show up in whatever way you can. And I promise your kids are eventually they're going to see that.
Yeah, it's certainly it's a marathon, and I'm glad in a lot of ways that I don't have to deal with that, and my heart breaks for guys that do.
Me too.
So the last part of the questions is I think we sort of touched on it, but it's again, there's this sort of theme, but why is child custody granted to women in over 85% of the cases? I don't even know if that's true. I don't know where that stat came from. I hate people who don't hate, but I really like it. I dislike it when people don't give me a source for whatever they're spewing. Like I prefer to have like, what is that? Where's that come from?
And that stat is probably coming from Google, which is not going to, it's not the United States. Like you need to know exactly where you live and why. So custody and parent time are two different things, and a lot of people don't recognize that. Like a woman can get granted to be the custodial parent, but that's only for purposes of where the child goes to school and holiday parent time. But you can have 50-50 custody or parent time. So you just have to understand that. Like in Utah, a lot of times the primary caretaker is going to be deemed the custodial parent. So you don't need to worry about that. What we need to worry about is what is your parent time.
Yeah.
And again, we've already talked about that. This just comes from gender roles in the country. It's just what it is. So we're moving away from that. Again, I don't think that it's unheard of or unlikely a man can get 50-50. I think they can get them in Utah now, even without the presumption, if you just are showing up and showing that you want to be an equal dad. So that's what you just need to be doing. Just be showing up, take on the role of the primary caretaker, send them dinner, you got, if you have a little girl, learn to braid her hair. Because guess what? If you want 50-50 time, you got to make sure your kid's hair is done, whether you're the dad or the mom. So there's just stuff like that sometimes we just don't think about because we're married and we just got our roles. But, well, now you're not. So step up. You get to do everything now. You get to work and you get to be that, primary caretaker. So that's what the court wants to see. The other thing that the court really wants to see is that you'll support the relationship with the other parent. So, as much as you're mad at your wife or mad at your spouse that you're divorcing, you got to let that go, because you can have a really shitty spouse, but they can still be a really good parent. And you've got to be able to separate those, because the court really wants to see that you two can work together for the benefit of your children. And you're going to have to get there. Even if you have minimum time, you're still going to have to co-parent with the other side. So you better kind of get to the point where you can make that a routine, because your kids are going to benefit from it. And if you have to go to court, it's just going to help you show the court, hey, I've been the one always supporting the relationship with the other side. And that's going to be a factor that's weighed heavily when determining parent time and custody in Utah.
Yeah, it's one of those easier said than done things, depending on your circumstances. I have struggled with it, not so much in supporting their relationship, but just in holding her accountable in my mind. And unfortunately, fair, unfair, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't really matter. It is what it is. I can't punish her, and I sure don't want to through the children. But it's not easy sometimes to just be like, it's okay. You left, you lied, you cheated. It's fine. Let's just work on co-parenting. It's really not that simple. But I understand your point. It's tough. It's really tough.
That's why you need to read my book, because you're going to be okay. Like I don't believe in cosmic. I don't believe that there's one perfect person out there.
No.
And what I do believe, though, is that we use our marriages as crutches to feel like we're fulfilled or that we have self-worth. And what we realize is that that's just an empty vase. And our marriage is never going to get us to the level of happiness. And so if you can get yourself back to a place where you realize your value and you find out what makes you happy, then in your next relationship, your next marriage, you're going to be able to elevate that. But until you recognize who you are, what you value, what brings you joy and happiness, your spouse is actually going to just, it's not going to help. And in fact, that's what's going to be the demise of the marriage. So use this opportunity as just an opportunity for you to just be like, you know what do I need? What do I like? What, be a little selfish, because in marriage, a lot of times we're like, don't be selfish.
Right.
Don't do things for yourself.
Right.
I remember when my husband and I were going through, our separation, my husband told me he wanted to divorce me. And I was like, what? And I remember he used to go play basketball like all the time. Like that was his thing. And I used to be so angry about it, because I was like, why do you want to go play basketball? You should want to spend time with me.
Right.
And what I recognized is that I was the one who was like, basketball made him feel better and gave him endorphins to be, a whole person. And I was the one who kept waiting for my husband to come back and sit with me on the couch to make me happy. And I was miserable. So there's so many ways that we could be looking at ourselves and thinking, what do I need to be happy? What do I need to be fulfilled? And it's not going to be your marriage.
So, no, I agree. It's I think it is an opportunity. I agree with you there. It is an opportunity to grow and learn about yourself and to be a better person. But it is a process, and can be a very, very difficult one, especially in initial stages of, I'm leaving, I want a divorce, and then all the fallout from that. But I want to wrap up with the last question that I ask everybody, which is, what are some words of wisdom you would impart to a man who just found out? I mean, I think you probably covered it, but this is an important question. I think, they just found out that she wants a divorce. She's just moved out, or she's asked you to move out, or what are some words of wisdom you would give to that man?
Yeah. That's the thing is that nobody goes into a marriage thinking, when they make those vows of till death do us part, thinking that we're going to then end in divorce, even though everybody knows that almost 50% of first marriages end in divorce.
Yeah.
So when that actually happens to you, especially a male ego and the way that males operate, it becomes this like kind of like ego of, am I not good enough? Did I do something wrong? Oh, look at, I'm failing my family. I'm failing society. Yeah. And what we need to recognize is that the failed marriage is not something that you should be concentrating on. What you should be turning around and saying, what can I do right now to stand up and become this whole person that maybe I've been lacking? A lot of times, especially as men, you're like, I gave her everything. I gave her money and security, and I gave her children. But at the end of the day, if you don't know what your wife's love languages are, and you just kept thinking that financial security was what she needed, then you need to go and figure out, what is your love language? What did you need? And what are you missing from this relationship? And then turn it around of, what can I do again to become the version of myself that I am not right now? Yeah. And you're going to be okay. No one dies from divorce. It's hard. It's going to be probably one of the hardest things you have to go through, especially if it's high conflict, especially if you're fighting over kids. But you're going to be okay, and you're worth it. And guess what? If you can turn yourself around and you can make yourself a better person, the person that comes into your life later is going to sure be lucky, because they get all of you, something that you probably haven't been for a really long time, and you deserve it. You're worthy of it.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I couldn't agree more. It is very, very difficult. It is the hardest thing I've ever done, for sure. I lost my father when I was 22, and that was pretty difficult. But this trumps that, unfortunately. But it also is an opportunity, and has presented an opportunity for me to grow as a person, to learn more about myself, and to sort of, raise who I am, so that the next one, hopefully, that does come is also raised, so to speak, if you know what I'm saying. If I'm in a better headspace, I'm going to attract someone in a better headspace. And if I'm not dependent on someone else for my happiness and for my value and my worth, then I'm going to be in a better spot as well. So Jill, I want to thank you for coming on and taking the time to talk to me today. You have a lot of valuable information today, and I thank you. How can people find you? What's the best way to find Jill Coyle?
Yeah, so if you're just wanting to get some legal thoughts, coyllaw.com is my we've got thousands of blogs and information and facts, some general, some more specific to Utah, but that can give you a lot of kind of leeway. I have my personal website, jillcoyle.com, which expands out a little bit more to more empowerment and helping you find purpose, and then you can find everything I'm doing right now regarding my podcast, my book, presentations and stuff like that. So and then you can always find me on my Instagram or all my social media platforms, which is just Jill Coyle, as easy as that. COIL, just like a coil. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.
Hang in there. You're awesome. Rising Phoenix. That's what you got. And you're helping so many others. It's important.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, take care.
All right. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Thank you to Nick Coyle and Lifer for allowing me to use their song, Born Again, which you're hearing now and at the intro to the podcast. Thank you to Justin Dulahanty and all of my brothers at the Alpha Code. Please visit the website, risingphoenixpodcast.com, to connect with me and other like-minded men who are looking to thrive and grow after their divorce. And remember to surround yourself with people who add value to your life, who challenge you to be greater than you were yesterday, who sprinkle magic into your existence like you do to theirs. Life is not meant to be done alone. Find your tribe. Take care.